And today we had the head of Iranian Supreme National Security Council. He came out and he said that he's going to punish those people who were participating, who were part of the assassination of the supreme leader of Iran and the Iranian people and other Iranian people. I think the case of Netanyahu is when it comes to the assassination or something like this, they don't see the whole strategy of Iran, Scott, is not based on assassinating people. And it's not just about Iran. The whole acts of resistance, look at their behavior. They're more strategic than, focusing on the people, assassinating the people. They're basically fighting, look at the targets during the war. They were not attacking civilians and trying to assassinate even Benjamin Netanyahu. It was something beyond that. You have to destroy the tools, the means that they can use against you.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying that where'd they get Iran? Look, Iran won the war. They're losing the peace. Okay, let's just make it as clear as day. Iran's not winning right now. Every day this stupid farce goes on, Iran's getting weaker and weaker and weaker because they're losing their leverage. And at some point in time, the United States is going to recharge. You know who can play this game over and over and over and over and over again? The United States. You know who can't play this game over and over again? Iran. Iran won the war. I give them full credit for that. But they're losing the peace right now. And one of the reasons is they need to recognize that in Israel and the United States, we have cult of personalities. It's sort of a pro hint here for the Iranians. We tend to mirror project onto our enemies. So when we say, oh, we kill the supreme leader, the whole system falls apart. That's because we know that if we lose our supreme leader, the narcissist in chief, or Bibi, the mad dog, Netanyahu, the system will fall apart. Here's a hint to Iran. Kill Bibi Netanyahu, and Israel would devolve into civil war. I will never advocate for the assassination of an American president, so don't even try, because the consequences would be dire. But watch what happens when the president suffers political assassination in November. Watch what happens to America. Again, I am not advocating physical violence against the President of the United States. I would never do that. I believe in the constitutional responses. And the constitutional response to an incompetent man such as this is to punish him on election day. And the way you punish Donald Trump is to ensure that the House of Representatives will be under the chairmanship of Hakeem Jeffries, who will impeach. And normally I wouldn't support that, but now I do, absolutely. But we also need the Senate to fall under the control of, Chuck Schumer. And then we get convict. And that's how you punish Donald Trump: political assassination, the destruction of the Trump brand, the destruction of the Trump image. And this is the price that this man has to pay for the crimes he has committed: crimes against humanity, crimes against the American people, crimes against the notion of the constitutional republic. He is single-handedly killing the constitutional republic. We're going to have our 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, and this man's going to fuck it up. What should be a solemn celebration of one of the greatest documents ever written is just going to become a celebration of the orange-faced fat buffoon. I mean, no one gives a damn about this man. I want him eradicated from the pages of history. I want him treated like Rome treated Carthage. I want every edifice to Donald Trump to be crumbled into the ground. I want salt to be sown on the field of the Trump family name. I want it to make sure that the Trump name never again grows. This is what damage this man has done to this country. This isn't just political embarrassment. He's destroying the country I swore to give my life in defense of. He's destroying it. Now, we, the people, are letting him do that. And we don't do ourselves any favor by electing the Democrats, because understand, we're just replacing one rabid dog with another rabid dog. The Democrats are not going to come in and say, let's preserve the Constitution. They're going to come in and say, how do we get revenge on this man and those who supported this man? And then we just fall into a bloody cycle of political infighting that could perhaps get worse. Don't want it to. But no, Iran needs to understand Okay, again, from the Iranian perspective, just let Donald Trump be Donald Trump right now, because he'll die in November, die politically. And you've won. At that point in time, you've won. You've defeated, because the system will collapse in amongst itself. Netanyahu, you got to kill him, physically kill him. That's it. He has to die. Maybe he'll die of cancer soon, or otherwise he has to be killed. Because otherwise he's going to sit there. He's a festering, cancerous, parasite who just wants war. That's all he wants. That's all he knows. That's the only thing that can keep him alive. Netanyahu has never once articulated any vision of realistic peace. He doesn't believe in peace. He believes in the expansion of greater Israel, which means conquest, permanent warfare. This isn't about the system. This isn't about the Israeli system. Netanyahu is the Israeli system. He's been around for far too long. He's perverted the entire notion of what the Israeli state once was. There was a time when they had a prime minister named Yitzhak Rabin. Wasn't perfect, but at least he tried to promote peace. Netanyahu is the man who murdered him. Netanyahu is the man that empowered a right-wing, fanatic Talmudic scripture quoting rabbi to somehow paint Yitzhak Rabin as a Jew worthy of killing, and some fanatic right-wing, Jewish Orthodox fanatic murdered Yitzhak Rabin. And in doing so, murdered Israel, because now Israel is governed by a madman who has built a cult of personality. Israel is nothing other than the cult of personality of Bibi Netanyahu. The Trump problem is going to be solved in November. The Bibi Netanyahu problem has to be solved another way.
Do you think that with the current situation, in the next election, the people of the Trump administration, J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio, do they have any sort of chance to win the next election, presidential election, with what we've seen so far?
No. They've attached themselves to a loser, to a madman. I mean, there's always a chance. I mean, because the Democrats, if they can find a way to screw it up, they will find a way to screw it up. But the Democrats will have 2 years to destroy. Remember, Marco Rubio has committed crimes. J.D. Vance has committed crimes. And so they should be impeached as well. Their names should be dragged through the mud. And if you can get a conviction, that'd be wonderful. So I don't think they survive this. And I think the Democrats are going to get power in 2028, and then they'll screw it up. And then America, we're heading down the wrong path. We're not heading towards a revivalism of, the constitutional republic. We're heading back to where we're going to replace one cult of personality with another cult of personality. No American politician at this juncture has the courage of a George Washington to reject the crown. Because what's needed right now is a total rejection of the unilateral executive, this theory that the presidency is constitutionally, imbued with total powers. The Supreme Court seems to be backing this because they're all political appointees of Donald Trump, and they're supporters to the most part. We've seen some interesting decisions made lately. But what we need is a president, for instance, to go to the War Powers Act and tell Congress that that's unconstitutional, that these responsibilities reside with Congress, not the president, and that the president's rejecting the way that, these things have been. Man, we find a president like that, this country can be saved. We find a president that makes Congress do its job, that'd be amazing. We find a president that would actually create a balanced judiciary, a Supreme Court that wasn't overly politicized, who wouldn't be afraid to appoint somebody from the other political party's slate because he was a better constitutional scholar than the one on your party, that you don't care about the political results, you care about the rule of law, you care about the Constitution. Find me a president like this and this country can be saved. No such person exists right now.
There are people who are pessimists about the United States, say it doesn't matter how much the American people are against Israel and the Zionists. After all the political system of the United States is under the thumb of the Zionists in the United States. But recent polls and recent, primaries basically show how even if you have the Zion AIPAC behind some candidates, they cannot win easily. They were defeated, by the way, two of them. The two new candidates that are winning against the APAC, they were calling genocide in 2023, 4, and they were fighting against what's going on between Palestine and Israel, and they're winning right now. They're on the path of winning to go to the Congress in 2026. And do you think this sort of change would somehow transform? It's little by little. It's not tremendous. It's not, the whole wall is not collapsing, but you see the cracks in the wall that is happening, that is serious, in my opinion.
Yeah, you do, but you also see that AIPAC can pour $30 million into a race in Kentucky and throw out Thomas Massey.
Yeah.
So it's point, counterpoint, strike, counterstrike. This shouldn't be about playing games. It should be about the total eradication of the total nullification of any notion of legitimacy for a pro-Israeli lobby. This isn't about winning political fights. This is about redefining how America defines itself. And we need to stop playing word games. Being against Israel is not anti-Semitic. It's just being against a genocidal, warmongering state. And the American people need to come to grips with that. That Israel is not an American ally. They are not an American friend. They've been an enemy of the United States from day one. Their job is to spy on us, steal our secrets, and use us politically so that we can continue to empower them. They are a parasite that has attached itself to the host. And that's when the American public reaches that level of enlightenment, then we'll stand a chance. If you just turn this into standard politic game about money, it'll be win some, lose some, and because again, so they beat the AIPAC candidate this time. Now they have to govern. I mean, one of the things people forget is that it's not the hardest thing in the world to challenge an incumbent and win office, hold that office, because the real challenge is going to come once you're in office, when you start picking up the phone and raising money, which you have to do on day one. Now you're up against a machine, and you're going to be spending so much time doing that. And then what's going to happen too is that you're going to get primaried, which means you're going to be exhausted in 2 years. So you're already starting to fight a fight right after you won. There's not too many people that can survive that. AIPAC has been playing this game for a long time. So as long as AIPAC retains the notion of legitimacy, I think they're going to make it difficult to get pushed out of Congress. The American people just have to wake up and call a spade, that Israel is an enemy of the United States, and any entity that supports Israel is not just an agent of a foreign government, but an agent of a hostile government. And we must treat AIPAC the way we would, as an agent of any nation openly hostile to the United States. They need to be hunted down, eradicated, imprisoned, prosecuted. It should be illegal to be a sympathizer of the state of Israel today, because Israel isn't just anti-Semitic and genocidal. They're anti-American, straight up anti-American. They're the number one intelligence threat to the United States. It's amazing when the intelligence community acknowledges this, and yet Congress continues to behave as if Israel's our friend. Israel's not our friend. Hell, the Iranians are more friendly to us than Israel, because Iran at least truly wants peace with the United States. Israel doesn't. Israel wants a permanent state of war, and they want American kids to die for them.
Do you think that the Trump administration is getting convinced by Europeans and those people, Ukrainian lobby in the United States, that Ukraine is somehow changing the game, it is gaining some sort of leverage over Russia? This is the tone we are hearing from the Trump administration, not only from Donald Trump himself, from Marco Rubio, from other senior officials in Washington. What is that? Where does it come from?
It's information warfare. I mean, this is straight up propaganda. This whole drone campaign that the Ukrainians are running is a propaganda-driven campaign. They're causing some inconvenience to Russia. They're causing some slight pain, but no one talks about what else is going on, because while Ukraine is putting two FP5 drones into Volgograd, Russia is eradicating entire factories. While they're blowing up a handful of gasoline stations, Russia's taking out the entire gasoline infrastructure in in southern Ukraine, so that the Ukrainian military can't function, can't survive. Russia's eradicating the Ukrainian army. All these drone operations that had success in June. Well, guess what, guys? While the Ukrainians are out there playing their little drone games and attacking civilians, committing acts of terrorism and causing inconvenience, the Russians were doing Overwatch and doing Pattern of Life. And every once in a while, the Ukrainians will make a mistake, as you will do over time. The guy that's hidden successfully, he drinks out of his water bottle and throws it into the trash can that he's supposed to place it in. But he throws it, bounces off the lid, rolls out underneath the branch, and suddenly a Russian drone says, water bottle. Then the Russians sit there and immediately target. Next thing you know, you have 3 FAB-500s landing on site, killing everybody inside. They're all dead now. That's happening over and over and over again. The Ukrainians are losing people like you wouldn't believe, and they're not able to sustain this drone warfare. And, they're receiving a lot of drones, but they're losing a lot of drones. Most of the drones get shot down by the Russians. But now that, the fact is the drone assembly facilities are being identified. The Russians are sitting there figuring it out, and they're taking it out. Now the Ukrainians will get even more support, and this may prompt a Russian response against Europe. But the point is, the United States is lying to itself. Marco Rubio is an idiot, doesn't know anything about the front lines, not getting briefed on accurate intelligence. The intelligence community doesn't know how to tell the truth. How can the CIA tell the truth about a project that it's heavily invested in? The CIA can't admit that it's failed because the CIA needs this project to continue. So they'll always exaggerate their capabilities. They'll always exaggerate, what the potential is. They'll never tell the truth about what the reality is until it's too late. We saw this in Vietnam, just in case people understand. Scott, you're just saying things. No. It's patterns repeat themselves. That's just the way life is, guys. Patterns repeat themselves. Go look up, Sam Adams, CIA analyst, did the manpower assessments of the enemy, and take a look at how the United States just straight up lied about the number of casualties. We exaggerated enemy casualties because we were deceiving ourselves, and we did it knowingly. He knew it. Everybody knew it. But once we get into a pattern of lies, it's politics. Politics isn't about telling the truth. Politics is about achieving a political outcome on a domestic level. So you deceive the American people as long as possible until the deception can no longer be sustained. And then the whole house of cards falls in. That's what happened in Vietnam. That's what's going to happen here. Ukraine cannot win this war. Ukraine will not win this war. Ukraine is losing this war. And it doesn't matter how many well-funded AI-driven chatbots you have out there flooding social media. It isn't going to change that equation. The Ukrainian soldiers are getting slaughtered on the approach to Slavyan, slaughtered inside Kramatorsk, slaughtered. And when the final city urban defense belt collapses, there's nothing behind it. This war will go on, and Russia will continue to win and win. You can drag it out. You can, if you want to fight to the last Ukrainian, I guess that's what's going to be. I think Russia's done with the concept of peace. Whatever concessions they made in Alaska are done. No, Marco Rubio said that they're done. Oh, there were no concessions. Yes, they were, Marco. You're a liar. See, the Trump administration can't tell the truth about anything. They just straight up lie. They manufacture lies. It's as if, Joseph Goebbels lives today in the United States. Just tell the lie over and over and over again, and people will believe it. And that's the American modus operandi. We're incapable of telling the truth. We being the government of the United States. Incapable of telling the truth. So we deceive ourselves. We deceive the American people. And what's happening right now in regards to Ukraine is a massive deception operation. But you know who's not buying it? The Russians. The Russians don't give one jackass damn about Gilbert Doctorow. Oh, I spoke to a taxi driver, and I had dinner with a bunch of 80-year-old morons who tell me that Vladimir Putin's days are numbered. And no, I just came from Russia. I speak to different people than Gilbert Doctorow. I was out the front line. When's the last time Gil went to the front line? Never. Is there frustration in Russia? Hell yeah, there's frustration. Is there a certain element that's talking about, we should, Russia should attack, should bomb, should nuke? Sure, but they don't govern Russia. You know who governs Russia? A president with unprecedented levels of public support. Unprecedented levels of public support. People say, oh, support's collapsing because it went from 81% to 78%. I don't think there's an American politician alive who would say, God, I only have 78%. Things are looking pretty bad for me. Things are okay. It doesn't mean that Putin's not concerned. Of course he's concerned. He's concerned about Russia, and he understands, trajectory. But when he spoke at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, he made it clear in his opening statement, which did not discuss Ukraine at all, that Ukraine conflict will not define Russia's future, that Russia's future is going to be defined by economic growth, economic stability, investment, climate, things of this nature. But then he made sure in the question and answer period that people understood that this war only ends one way, a Russian victory that achieves the objectives that Russia has set out. And you see that Russia is redefining its objectives for the first time, and now we get a hint of what kind of concessions Russia was putting on the table at Anchorage, where they were talking about the total liberation of the Donbass, and all of a sudden, Novorossiya. And what's interesting about the term Novorossiya is that it can be interpreted in any number of ways, to include Odessa. So Ukraine just basically talked itself into non-existence. This war will end when Ukraine ceases to exist. And if that's the way that the West wants it, that's the way the West will have it. If they want to play it so that it goes on until Europe doesn't exist, I think Russia has a game plan developing for that as well. But all this stuff that you're reading, it's just pure propaganda. It's just crap. It's like the United States trying to convince everybody that we won the war in Iran. We didn't. And now we're trying to convince people that Ukraine is winning the war. They're not.
What is the timing of the war in the mind of Russians? How do they see the timeline? How long?
There is no timeline. There is no timeline. Why are we talking about timeline?
That's why I'm asking you. That's why I'm asking you, because basically what the argument in the West is the timeline.
But there is no timeline. That's a Western construct. Not a single Russian official, Lavrov, Putin, any of them, have said, oh God, we're calendar driven, got to achieve this by this date. They are not calendar driven. That is a construct of the West. We make it up because that's the only way that we can, fabricate a narrative that says Russia's losing, by artificially creating timed events that don't happen on the, when they were supposed to happen. It dates back to the beginning of the conflict, where you had analysts such as me saying the war was going to be over in a week. I was wrong. It wasn't a war. It was a special military operation. I didn't understand that till later. Once I understood it, then the light went off. But I wasn't the only one fooled. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff was fooled. The director of the CIA was fooled. Everybody was fooled. There's not a single swinging dick out there that can say, I knew that this war was going to drag on and on and on and on. Zelensky didn't even know. He was begging, for Putin not to assassinate him. That's how much lack of confidence he had. But the Russians weren't playing that game. That's the big analytical error that everybody made. We thought Russia was going to war. Russia wasn't going to war. And had we studied Russia a little bit closer, we would have realized that, because Russia hadn't assembled the sufficient manpower to win a war. Russia hadn't done the economic preparations necessary to sustain a war. Russia was going in for a very quick special military operation designed to compel Ukraine to return to the negotiating table. And in this, Russia succeeded. Within 6 days of the SMO starting, Ukraine entered into negotiations in Gomel, Belarus. They transferred those negotiations over to Turkey. And by the end of March, we had the Istanbul communique, a nearly completed peace plan. Russia wins, because that's all Russia wanted. Then the West intervened and changed the whole game. Remember when I got in trouble for saying it's a game-changing event? Remember my good friend Larry Johnson saying I'm smoking dope? No, it was a game-changing event. I'm sorry, people. The game changes when the rules change, when the conditions change. If you have a quarterback that's, playing and he gets hurt and you replace him with Tom Brady, the game has changed. You now have a different quarterback who can throw bombs and can do stuff, maneuver. It's just the way things are. Then Russia changes the game back, and we've been going on and on and on. So we are talking about, not calendar-driven things, but basically objective-driven. Russia has objectives, and Russia will achieve those objectives. And that's how this war is done. Russia is waging a strategic war of attrition against not just Ukraine, where now they're being called upon to empty the genetic database of a nation of tens of millions, but also to eradicate the industrial capacity of Europe. So Russia's involved in a war of attrition against a European economy that dwarfs it. I mean, the Russians have, depending on, on how you calculate, $3 to $5 trillion economy. Europe has, $15 trillion economy. So how do you beat them? Over time, you have to wear them down, wear them down, wear them down, wear them down. And that's what Russia's doing, is wearing them down. They're winning across the board. But it's not a calendar driven. This is the game played by the West to, again, invent the notion that Russia is somehow failing. But in doing so, they fail to see why Russia is winning. And they also fail to see that what the danger is of pushing Russia to the point where the war of attrition model no longer succeeds. Because when that happens, Russia will go to war. And Russia today is prepared to fight a war in a way that Europe has no concept of. Europe can't fight a war. For all the talk they have out there, they have no army, they have nothing. They are literally a paper tiger. So what game does Europe want to play? Whatever game it is, it's called Europe loses. That's the name of the game. Europe loses. And if America wants to jump on board, America will lose as well. Maybe Russia will lose too. If it's a nuclear war, everybody loses. But the idea that Russia is going to let Ukraine be empowered by the collective West to wear Russia down without any consequence accrued to Europe is absurd in the extreme.
Our mutual friend Mark Sloboda he says all wars are one war, and that war is, because it all comes to the United States and their stockpile when it comes to sending missiles, interceptors, everything. So you have the war in Ukraine, then you have the war in Iran against Iran and against Russia, and both of them are feeding from Washington, feeding from the United States. And you mentioned Europeans, the German, arm production, Rheinmetall, it said that they want to produce more weapons for Ukraine. How capable are they when it comes to the production? And we know the problem with the energy, because they have, the situation in the Strait of, many people are arguing the Strait is open, and it's not open, by the way. It's something like 30 ships or tankers passing through the Strait for the majority of Iranians, basically. And you see it's not open. And so the problem continues in Europe with the case of energy. So it means that they're not going to be that capable of producing more arms. And how big is that Europe, the way Europe can help Ukraine and produce arms for Ukraine?
I mean, if you put enough resources into a problem and you give the actors involved sufficient time, and there's no, let me put it this way, to be only too crude. If I've got a field and I have two rabbits, one male and one female, how long will it take the rabbits to fill that field? Because we know rabbits, they procreate like mad. So you just say rabbits doing this, boom, 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 boom. And the point is, eventually you're going to fill the field. It's inevitable. Now I introduce some coyotes, some wolves, some bobcats. And how long will it take for the rabbits to fill the field? They'll never fill the field. Europe is a rabbit. That's it. Soft little fuzzy things. Incapable of doing anything in a real world. But if the Russians allow Europe to create a field with no predators, then the rabbits are going to reproduce. And that's what's happening now. Europe is being treated as a field with no predators. So Rheinmetall can build a factory. Even if the factory doesn't make economic sense. Now they have Sweden that can provide, the special kind of plate steel necessary for armored vehicles to be built. But normally, under a normal timeline, they couldn't respond. But if you're going to give them a decade to build, then the little fuzzy rabbits are going to appear. But the moment Russia puts some predators in the game, it's over. I'll say it now, and Russia needs to pick at least one, better three factories in Europe that are working on behalf of the Ukrainians. And I would highly recommend that Rheinmetall in Dusseldorf is one of them. And you don't hit it with one or two. You literally go Carthaginian on them. These factories cease to exist. There is nothing left, a pile of rubble. You can't go through and identify anything. You wipe it off the face of the earth. And then you turn to the Europeans and you say the predator is here. Every factory, every European institution that signed a joint production agreement with the Ukrainians is on our target list, and we will kill you. The only way to get off our target list is to allow Russian inspectors into your premises to guarantee that you've ceased doing what you were doing with the Ukrainians. But it is now a capital offense to arm Ukraine. Ukraine is now the enemy of Russia, and anybody who arms Ukraine is the enemy of Russia. And I would tell the United States that as well. We may not, the Russians could say, we may not attack the United States physically, but if you bring airplanes loaded with missiles and land them at Ramstein Air Base, we will wipe out Ramstein Air Base. You're on notice. The predator is here. The rabbits will not be allowed to reproduce. That's the only way this thing ends, to be honest, because otherwise what's happened is Europe has got this field with no predators, and they're just able to do things over time. But you insert a predator relationship, Europe can do nothing.
Thank you so much, Scott, for being with us today. Great pleasure, as always.
Yeah, I wish I was in a better mood, but you know what it is. I mean, I just, that J.D. Vance clip just irritated me. I don't know. I hope, you know, foreigners, they're used to Americans lying, but for an American audience, do you understand what just happened there? The vice president of the United States admitted the United States just lies. That's all we do is lie. We can't be trusted. We're nobody. We're nothing. In your childhood relationships, if you had a friend who lied like that, he would not be your friend. You would basically shove them off to the side. They would be shunned. And they should be shunned. J.D. Vance should be shunned, never treated with respect again. And nations should refuse to receive him. If Donald Trump sends him out to do it, the Iranians should say, no, J.D., is the MOU just buying time? Then we don't want to talk to you. The same thing with Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. Don't receive them. Don't ever meet with them. Shun them. And maybe shun the United States. Just say you don't matter anymore. You don't count. Because how can we count? All we do is lie. All we do is lie. And my country's turning 250 years old in 4 days. You know, I was alive during the bicentennial. And that was a special moment for me as a kid. I lived in Turkey at the time, and we were on a base, Balgat Air Base. And the Turks, because of the invasion of Cyprus, you know, we had sanctioned them. And so they had sanctioned us back, saying, you can't raise the American flag on base. You can't, Americans back then, we were pretty patriotic. We love our flag. We love our flag. It gave us pride to see our flag fly. So we were denied the right to see our flag fly over this base that had American, people living, working on it. On the 4th of July, 1976, the American community of Ankara gathered at Balgat, and the Turkish government said, on this day, you can raise the flag. And it was just the most stunning, because we had the barbecue going. We were playing a softball game, big softball tournament. My team did okay. But then we all stood and they played the national anthem, and the flag went up. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. We were crying tears of joy, tears of pride, because that was our flag, because it stood for something. It was stood for the 200th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And it meant so much to us. It filled our hearts with glee. Now we're coming with the 250th anniversary. My God, it's been 50 years. This country has no clue what we're celebrating, because this man won't let us understand what we're celebrating. This man's ruining everything. Everything. It's not about him. It's about the country. It's about the flag, the flag, the flag. That's why I get frustrated. And maybe I should have said no to your request to do an interview. Maybe I should have known that I was in a bad mood. But, I said yes, so I got to deal with it. But, man, this is not...
What you said, I think many of us understand the situation. All of us are dealing with these endless wars. I think you're right. You're right on each and every point that you've made during this interview. And Scott, stay on. I'm going to say something to you right after wrapping this up.
Oh, I'm going to get yelled at.
Yeah.